Hi everyone, and welcome to another video about Albert. This time is for version 3.0.0 of the application, which was a complete rewrite in C++ using Qt. If I were asked to just briefly show what the new capabilities are, I would probably go for a demonstration like this one that you are watching right now. So let's get into it. First thing I will do is I will move to square brush and I'll make it a little bit bigger, let's say 10 pixels across, right? Then the other thing I would do is to rotate the canvas to 22.5 degrees and show you that the brush is still axis aligned to the screen. Then let's move to an NTSC pixel ratio. So this is a display thing, but as you can see, the brush is still looking square, and it will look square on an NTSC display. Same thing for selections. The rectangular selections would be axis aligned to the screen when the canvas is rotated. Let's get to the other new bit, which is textures. As you can see, I can draw with a texture, and if I right click on a texture, I get the negative version of the texture. So you've got this many textures, but virtually doubled apart from the first one, because you have a texture and its negative version as well. Let's have a look at the presets, and let's change the mode to multicolor with the sprites in the side borders. Discard those changes. Again, we're back to NTSC pixel ratio. The canvas is unrotated. Let's rotate it again for displaying what the new version of Albert is capable of doing under circumstances. Let's enable symmetry drawing, kaleidoscope, which is my favorite, and again it has got a beautiful symmetry to it. That's why I like this mode, which was also available in the previous versions of Albert, but what was not available there was the ability to move the axis. So now I can do that, and let's see. What I can do is to actually draw shapes, and I can use this menu item, or I can use the flyout here. I'm interested in let's say hollow stars, and because this is multicolor, let's use texture, but let's also use two different colors for the texture itself. So the texture mode is at the moment 2 colors. You can use the stencil version of it, which would only draw the first color, and anything that's black in the texture would be drawn as transparent, so it will keep what is already there. When I'm drawing shapes, I'm drawing in what we refer to as a stage, which means that the shapes themselves stay vectors, so I can move them around, can rotate them, I can change their dimensions, and I can distort them if I want. The distortion is just about pressing the Alt key, and then you can do things like perspective if you wish, where at the moment there is no real concept of perspective in a 2D editor. And as you can see, I can also drag these points that change the shape of the star. Let's delete this one because I'm not really interested in showing that. Let's now enable the symmetry for shapes as well. By default it's not enabled because it might cause a little bit of noise, but it can be enabled. Again, as I said, the shapes can be nudged. Probably want to do something like this, and yeah, once I'm happy with the shapes, I can just commit the stage, and this becomes a single entry in the history of changes, so I can undo and redo in one go. Let's now have a look at another thing, anti-alias. For this one, what we might want to do is to actually show that we can change the axis, yeah, and let's change shape. Let's do circles. Let's do them thinner as well, and can do donuts as well if we want. It slightly and then rotate it. And while I'm drawing, I can actually change the properties of these shapes. I can change the texture if I want. But let's draw circles. This becomes imported in a second. So I've done this shape, and then I can do other shapes if I want, including a free path shape that I can still adjust the way I want. Again, I can use the Alt key for deformations, which do produce like symmetry. Now let me commit this stage and show that again the stage itself is a single commit in the history of changes. Right, and let's unrotate the canvas now. For circles is less important, but you see how these circles show as symmetrical. They're not ellipses. Bear in mind that this is multicolor mode, so you know, pixel boundaries and that kind of stuff, and there is anti-alias, yeah, but they show as circles. Let's and that's how they would show on an NTSC display. Let's see how they look like when you have got just a square pixel. As you can see, during the vector design of these shapes, the pixel aspect ratio influences the way they are really created. Once they are rendered, once they are copied to the main canvas, they stay as they are, but you can literally switch between different modes while you're editing, and you will get the result that is consistent with the aspect ratio for the pixels that you've chosen. So yeah, I've used a square brush, I've shown anti-aliasing, textures, drawing under rotated canvas, symmetry with a custom center, NTSC aspect ratio. These are some of the things that Albert Tree ships that are quite powerful that weren't in previous versions. The other thing that ships with it is, if I let's suppose we don't want symmetry for a second because that creates additional noise, but what we have now is also the lasso tool. So with the lasso tool we can be very precise in what we select. And what we can do is, let's say we want to change yellow, we want to change to purple because perhaps it works better in the side borders. And so what we can do is to just do a color swap. And as you can see, the anti-alias is telling us where the pixels were anti-aliased, and then what we can do is this one, change it to something else. Maybe let's change it to this. And we can do a color replace, and now what we can also do is we can cut the shape and do a deselect all, and then we can have the shape back for us, and we can just move it around. If we want the shape to show up as a transparent shape, what we can do is to hold the control key while we do the paste, and then the shape becomes transparent. The other interesting thing about this is that selections can be composed as well. So if I have a selection and I hold shift, I can do the composition, and let me see, if I hold alt, I can create a hole, and I can also do something very cool, which is inverting the selection. So rather than this being a hole now, this is selected, this is selected, and the hole is this one. That's about it for this time. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.